I speak quite often, well, at Mobile Monday here in Singapore, talking about mobile usage and social networking, as well as other events. And I find that here in Singapore, it's primarily English-speaking market, so therefore we look to the West for news when it comes to social media. And that conversation typically revolves around Facebook and Twitter. And of course, Facebook and Twitter are very important, especially here in Singapore and other parts of Asia. But actually, Asia is a very diverse market when it comes to social media. If we look at Southeast Asia versus Japan versus China, we see actually very different trends within these markets. Of course, China, which we'll talk about a bit more in detail later on, most people don't have access to Facebook or Twitter due to country restrictions, and therefore the social media landscape there is much different. Sina's Weibo is probably the most widely known example outside of China with more than 500 million users. Japan has very different sort of cultural expectations as far as social media usage online. A lot of people in Japan prefer anonymity rather than sharing who they are online as we might do on Facebook, and be able to interact with people through anonymous proxy rather than showing off who I am myself. There's also just sort of cultural ideas of being polite in Japan in the context of social media. I had a friend in Japan who said, she joined Facebook. Shortly after that, a guy who she kind of knew but wasn't really that interested in talking to invited her to be added as a friend. And just the cultural issue of saying no, she couldn't say no. I don't want to be this person's friend. Just made her decide that she didn't want to be on Facebook in general. And so services like GRI and DNA in Japan are mobile social networks built around anonymous users, primarily around game consumption. But those users on those networks are in the 30 to 40 million user range, while Facebook still has only about 13 million users within that country. Southeast Asia, Facebook and Twitter are also incredibly important. Twitter is probably the largest market. Indonesia is a well-known example in Southeast Asia with Twitter usage. Number 1 city for Twitter is Jakarta. Number 6 is Bandung, which is just a few hours drive away from Jakarta. So it's a highly engaged market on Twitter. But the thing about social media usage in Southeast Asia is really it's a mobile-first kind of experience where people are using these products on a mobile phone and not so much on their PC or on other devices.
Great. We'll talk about that for sure for probably a good part of this discussion. Jihi?
Hi, my name is Jihi, and I agree with everything Chris said. And I just noticed I was looking, he brought an iPad and I got a piece of paper, so I don't know if it's appropriate for this panel, but yes, I do agree with everything that Chris said. I do handle all of Asia in particular, but if you look at it in the context of Viacom and the audiences that we serve, and the audiences that are old enough to be on social media, from 13 in theory to above 30, we serve 3 brands, Nickelodeon, MTV, and Comedy Central mainly in Asia. And we do find that we get a lot of activity around Facebook and Twitter, obviously, but another platform that has become very important for us of late has been Instagram as well. And we do use Instagram very greatly to engage with our shows. And we've just started something called Instagram Requests. So you can, upload live requests of music videos, artists that you want to see, do shout-outs on TV, and we'll do those on our shows every week. So I think that's trending very quickly at the moment. And we do a lot of 360 activities around content, our celebrities, our VJs. And one of the latest ones that we found that was very viral, that went viral in Asia specifically, we promoted an April Fool's joke that we said we were going to do South Park in Hokkien. So we actually had a few Hokkien artists dub a 3-minute Hokkien South Park, which is quite funny. I didn't understand what he said, but it sounded really funny. And that got a huge level of engagement. I think we went over 6-7% in 2 days, which is amazing. In Asia alone, we see a lot of eyeballs. If you look at our .com sites especially, we get over 6 million eyeballs going to our .com sites, on top of coming to our Asia sites. If you look, another example is we have a SpongeBob Facebook page. Globally, it has over 43 million fans, and over 10 million of those are from Asia, and the bulk of those from Asia come from Indonesia and the Philippines. So you can see the level of engagement that we do have with our brands, and I think we can go into more detail as we progress.
Great, thank you.
Hi, my name's Edwin from Sina. So just as Chris has mentioned, Facebook and Twitter is actually not available in China. So for that particular reason, actually a whole different ecosystem exists within China itself. And just because we're focusing on one country doesn't mean that the potential is really large. Just on Sina Weibo itself, we actually have 500 over million users already. And a lot of people are spending lots of time on the platform. So they're spending close to about 90 minutes each day just on that platform itself. What they're doing on the platform, primarily there are 3 different usages. One of it's probably for personal usage, where they interact with their friends, their families. It's really an extension of their real world life onto social media platforms. The next one, of course, is really to have breaking news. So it's very similar to Twitter, where things happen in real time. So like for the latest example where there was a tragedy in Chengdu where the earthquake happened, we actually got the news much faster through Sina Weibo rather than through the traditional news platform as well. And of course, the third way of really using and leveraging Sina Weibo or social media in China is really consumers are leveraging it as a medium to broadcast themselves and set up themselves as a media channel to create causes, to rally people. So in a place like China where information flow is really restricted, it's really a great platform to get information flowing. So one example we had quite, and it's still ongoing, is really water pollution within China itself. It used to be just a local issue where people would see, oh, the river in my nearby town is polluted. But right now, because of Weibo, people are posting photos on Weibo itself, and somebody is collecting all these photos and reposting it over and over again. So from a local issue, these pollutions in rivers now becomes a national issue as well. So these are really the 3 key areas I feel that why Weibo as well has picked up so, or social media in China has picked up so greatly in the last couple of years.
Hi everyone. So I'm Meredith and I work on global social media campaigns for Lenovo. For us, our main channels are basically Facebook, Twitter. We've also got LinkedIn and Google+. Just like any brand would want to reach out to as many people as possible. Within our consumer business, we mainly target the millennials, and using social media as a channel to speak to them would be the most relevant. But one of the trends I would see that I don't think has been mentioned so far with our users, we realized that they liked, the audience would like to do more collaborative and co-creation in terms of content with the brand. So for Lenovo, instead of a brand kind of talking to just the audience, we start then being a brand to talk with the audience. But in the end, and this would be part of the presentation later when it's time for me to talk, we would then become a brand that would enable conversations between the audience. So that's something that I realized that our users on the platforms actually start to do a lot more. So for social, we post content to get response. We invite the audience and the community to then participate in content creation with us. And that is definitely something more engaging that I think the brand we're starting to do.
Great. Well, let's go back to, it's kind of funny that this show is co-located with the mobile show, and yet in many ways they're kind of one and the same given the heavy mobile penetration in Asia. It's, I think, over 80+% holistically across Asia Pacific, and some markets, I was sharing with Chris, I think Indonesia has 175 or 178% mobile penetration, I mean, people having multiple mobile devices. So you can't really talk about social media or digital marketing in any way without talking about the importance of mobile. So how from your perspective, I'll start with you, Chris. How does mobile influence brand strategy, content development, and social media? What are some of the implications of that?
So how does mobile impact brand strategy as far as reaching out to consumers? Good question. How does it impact you? Sorry, actually, I don't run many. I don't actually do many brand campaigns. But from my own personal perspective, as far as some of the work that we've done before, a lot of the examples, say from BBC, is to drive someone from an experience on their mobile phone or from within the social media to their experience elsewhere, whether it be on a PC site or a game or whatever. And so a big call to action has always been come to our site and do something. But I can see that from the examples earlier with Aliza this morning with Twitter, really the conversation can stay within the medium where they can keep it within mobile, don't have to go to the PC, and now the ability to integrate going directly from within social media to an application, that's been another important trend in order to keep people connected. In some markets around Southeast Asia, social media is really the only sort of thing that people subscribe for when they use a data service on a mobile phone. So for example, in Indonesia, I could sign up for a plan where I basically just get access to Facebook, Twitter, maybe BlackBerry Messenger if you want a BlackBerry. But then as soon as I need to exit that experience, there's a bit of a disconnect. So if you are reaching out to an audience in some of these markets, it's important to realize that I might get a lot of users on Twitter in Indonesia, but as soon as I ask them to go somewhere else, they might not be subscribed to something where I can connect with them. So that's a bit of a challenge.
If I can add to that, for us, mobile is extremely critical. If I give you an example of pre-mobile, I guess, when we did votes, which is something that we use for our events to engage with our audiences and make them part of everything that we do. Pre-mobile voting for something like the EMAs, the European Music Awards. We used, just from Asia, there were under 2 million votes, potentially. But as of 3 years ago, we started mobile voting in earnest, and we also have now a Best Asia category for the European Music Awards and the KCAs as well. The voting went from 2-3 million. This year, we actually broke the record to just out of Asia, including China, of course, to over 70 million votes, just out of Asia. So that shows you the power that mobile has. And I think it also has to do with the young millennial mentality or just the general lifestyle these days, not just for millennials, but for us. You're constantly here, and if you didn't have Facebook and Twitter and any other apps that show up and say, hey, vote here, you can win a ticket to the EMAs, or vote for your favorite artist, and it's being really emotionally engaged to a brand or to an artist or whatever it is that you're trying to push. I think that you can't separate it now. It just goes hand in hand. Because like Chris said, going to a PC now takes another step, and by the time you get to that step, you're already thinking about something else.
I think from a platform or China perspective, one of the things that brands have been asking the platform especially to do was really to focus on location-based services, and as well as how to create a connect between the offline and the online. So that's where mobile really comes into place. So how to get consumers to be active, even on digital or even on social, in a location, in an event, in basketball courts or in stores, and then how do you push them messages from the mobile platform or through the online platform and get them to go to your stores or to your events. So these are, I feel, one of the key trends that's really happening in China right now for mobile.
Well, for us as a brand, when we launch campaigns, especially in my area of work, mobile is definitely one of the the must-dos for us, especially for getting users to engage with the campaign. However, Lenovo as a brand, we're still growing in this space, and we're working on our social media campaigns as well. And most of the campaign experience sits within the social channels, for example, Facebook. And we're somewhat limited because on Facebook apps, if you have an app, you don't get to use it within your Facebook mobile application. So then we're limited in that sense. But mobile is definitely an important part. We always say that mobile is one of our biggest contributors to people who engage with the brand on the social channels. Maybe one day we would get to the point where you could actually use applications on Facebook on mobile. But right now, within the assets where we roll out, mobile is definitely one of the things we do. We're still limited with Facebook in terms of its capabilities on mobile.
Great. So the part of the challenge with social media, of course, is getting the right people and finding the right platform to engage with them. The other part is keeping them engaged and keeping them involved with you. And a lot of that has to do with content development and sort of content programs and that sort of thing. So let's go back in reverse order, Meredith. Let's start with you on this one, since I know you guys do a lot of content programs. How do you adapt content across Asia Pacific markets so that you can come up with a framework that works in multiple social platforms and markets and cultures?
Good question. So there is no winning template or there is no formula. I think everyone knows this, and it's really about what your brand, ultimately the content plan that we're trying to create. It's a work in progress document that we update on, I don't know, a regular basis. I actually have our content lead is in the room, and as I'm looking at her, I think the amount of work that we put in trying to analyze and give some science to the content and why would people engage with, a post like good morning, and that is the highest engaged post. I can never understand why. But within our content structure, we kind of have some rules that we go with, and it always goes back to what the brand stands for. And ultimately, our audience and what they like and what interests them are our products at the end of the day as well. So that's something that we have to find a good balance between brand and between product posts. And also, as I was talking about co-creation and getting response. So instead of us kind of just publishing and broadcasting to them, we usually make sure that we get some response as well. So a simple thing, getting them to fill in the blanks, and these are some of the posts that we kind of pepper in within the content calendars to get some engagement. So again, it's not really a formula, but we're still trying to experiment, pilot some interesting programs. We learn some practices from the best brands as well on social, looking at Red Bull and Oreo as some of the examples, and then we kind of adapt and look at what would fit for us. So that's how we approach our content plan.
Edwin.
I think most brands, they do have a lot of content planning, and it's really an ongoing process. One of the key things that brands should really focus on as well is also to look at the trending topics in the current social space. By leveraging a very, very strong topic, actually brands can do a lot. So 2 examples. One example was actually by North Face in China. There was this very old couple who wanted to elope. They were like in their 60s. They said they were going to elope in the next 1 month. North Face picked up on that thing and said, because that topic actually went really viral and saying that they're really old, what the hell are they doing? They're going to elope. So North Face picked up on that, and because it really in line in their brand campaign, which was saying that all the way up north to go like for an expedition. So it said that why don't you guys just elope and go all the way up north? So they really built upon that viral campaign as well, and then built their brand upon that. Another example was Nike. Nike is never an official sponsor for the Olympics or any sporting event. But in 2012, the London Olympics, actually, Nike really stole the show during that period in China. Their topic, Find Your Greatness, was trending number 10 throughout the Olympics. Friends around me were saying that if you want to know and find out the results of the Olympics, actually just go to look at Just Do It account, rather than go to the official Weibo account itself. So really, they're just leveraging what's really trending at that moment itself and generating content in real time.
I guess as Viacom, we're extremely lucky that we have, a great set of, IPs and brands and content to work with. Having said that, it's a challenge trying to find what you need to fit in or what you need to do at a certain time, at a certain place, at a certain market. SpongeBob, like I said, works really well in the Philippines, and Indonesia and most of our markets, but at the end of the day, let's face it, if you have a crap campaign or product, no one's going to come in and look at it. So I guess we have everything from apps to casual games to MMOGs, to votes to contests, and that really speaks to, again, who our audience is and what they are. So I think out of all the brands, we have the most tools to work with, but having a lot of choice doesn't mean, that you're doing the right thing a lot of the time. But, if you look at what works for us in terms of demographic as well, and the demographic dictates, a lot of activity and a lot of presence. Voting creates a lot of attention. Contests for us is one of our top. We're all constantly giving away tickets, movie tickets, behind the scenes packages, backstage passes with artists, concerts, etc. So, in that sense, I think that it's something that we're very lucky with.
And Chris, you have a lot of experience in emerging markets. What did you see sort of working in those markets from your perspective?
In the case of working with a brand who wanted to reach out to audiences in emerging markets, my previous job, I headed up business development at MiG33, which is a mobile social network, which is roughly 60 million users around emerging markets, including Indonesia, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Middle East, and Africa. We did a case, a marketing campaign with Samsung, where they wanted to reach out with a new Android phone, a lower cost Android phone, to people in second and third tier cities, maybe a B and C economic class. And so our social network really lined up really well with the kind of customer they're trying to reach out for. So, while other social networks may have a very well-defined sort of ability to advertise and provide you metrics and so forth to be able to put together first-class campaigns, in emerging markets, I would say get out there and experiment. There are other options to reach out to consumers through social media. The campaign we did with Samsung, we actually tied into the developer program, which we put together so they could build a game on top of the MiG33 platform, and then be able to actually hand out credits to consumers, which they could then use to spend through other parts of the service. And so it was a very successful campaign for them to be able to reach out to their target demographic.
Great. They have asked me to make sure we end right on time at 10:30. I guess they have to split the rooms for the next session. So I want to make sure we leave time for questions. If any of you have questions for the panel. Not yet. Okay. Well, I still have other questions, so we can keep going. Vincent actually touched on this next question a bit in the BBC, in his presentation about BBC, and I think the point is what happens. What about life after Facebook? In the markets where Facebook really is still a dominant player, they're making a lot of changes to their algorithms, and they're becoming a much more commercial organization, which is challenging for brands that don't have massive social media budgets yet. So what other platforms are really emerging and becoming useful? Pinterest, Instagram. You talked, Meredith, about Instagram. What are some other trends there? Is it content related? I mean, are they more visual platforms? What are the trends there? So let's start. Yeah, you talked about Instagram before.
Well, live after Facebook. I wonder when would that actually happen. But so I think for Lenovo, what we're trying to do is build communities of people who think alike. And our brand is all about for those who do. So we're building the doer community. I think chasing the platform game, it's a hygiene factor, which at the same time it's frustrating, but we have to do it. For us, we are using all kinds of platforms. I'm not saying that that's the right approach, but we're trying to communicate a brand and reach out to the widest group of audience as much as possible. But ultimately, what we want to do is build a community. I think the day where we actually move off from the platforms might be interesting, because I think that might be a step that's going to happen very soon, given that Facebook is turning so commercial. So that's my point of view, to be platform agnostic and not be reliant on platforms, maybe.
How about in China, Edwin? I mean, We won't say life after Weibo there.
Well,
that is
I
not
would
the
say
case.
that from Sina's perspective, we actually work very closely with a lot of brands. We actually hear what brands require and need. Of course, we wouldn't put in everything into the platform because we also consider user experience as our number one priority. But definitely we hear what brands require, and we work in partnership with a lot of brands actually to develop or co-develop certain kinds of products or apps as well. So I wouldn't say that there is a post-Weibo yet, but definitely I think we're still hoping to partner with brands for the longer term.
What we're not experimenting, what we started looking at the moment, you have chat platforms, WeChat, you have Line in Japan, you've got KakaoTalk that originated out of Korea, and now it's spreading very rapidly around the world. And KakaoTalk is a little bit more, I guess, advanced or complex platform that they're building. It's not just a simple WhatsApp sort of chat component, it's a lot more like WeChat, where you do have a sort of like a Facebook component in there as well. So it's 3 or 4 things in one, where you can buy games, you create a community around the chat functions, and you can set up, like Meredith said, a full-fledged community. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of our audiences, the younger generation, or the millennials moving to. So we've started setting up presence in those platforms. So we'll have to ask me in another year, see how it goes.
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate, especially in Line, if you go to Thailand, take the Sky train around Bangkok, literally every other phone that you see on the train, someone is there online, online using Line, sending stickers to each other. I think that's an excellent opportunity for brands to take advantage of, to be able to, say, sponsor the stickers, which do cost the consumer money. Some are free, some are paid. But to give them something, some value where they can actually exchange that with friends, I think that's an excellent opportunity. And it's a very fast-growing segment in mobile, and there's a lot of investment coming from Naver, from companies from North Asia and this part of the world to grow that user base.
Great. Were there any questions that anyone thought of while we were talking just now? Perhaps not. Any final thoughts before we wrap up? No? Great. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your insights.